I'm hoping the speaker is okay as well. So we're going to, like I said, I'm going to call an audible here, and we're going to talk about some adaptive gardening here. All right, so can everyone see my screen here on adaptive gardening? No. All right, so when when I uh, all right, so how many of you feel free to kind of put it in the chat here, or even unmute and everything like that? How many of you are kind of feeling like Yoda in the picture here? Giving up gardening, I should. So, um, maybe you're not as young as you used or athletic as you used to be. Maybe you have a harder time completing the tasks that you once enjoyed. Um, Also, what what was once a simple and enjoyable task is now something that takes a little more effort and planning as well. Or maybe even you think that gardening is for younger individuals. Anybody kind of relate with any of them? I know Mara says all but the last one. So yeah, I can definitely, or I've had people when I've given this presentation before, people sympathize with that as well. So, all right. So before we really dive into what adaptive gardening is, we want to start with a little bit more statistics here as far as what adaptive gardening is and everything like that. So 55% of American households engage in some form of gardening activity in a given year, and another 20% plan to do so in the future. So, that's almost 75% of the houses in America have have gardened or want to do something with gardening. When we look at that on a dollar, what it actually costs to do a garden, the average garden yields about $600 in produce every year, with a cost of about $70 per year. So this is a very, very good return on investment, especially if you're an economics person like I am. You want to look at the return on investment. This is a tremendous return on investment and for your time and energy and effort as well. But the other side of that is the average household spent about $500 in gardening tools in 2021. This includes everything from your flower bulbs to the furniture and everything like that. And children who are involved with gardening are more apt and more willing usually to eat the vegetables that they grow. Case in point is that little boy there on the screen, the picture there. That's actually my son, and that is a carrot that he grew in his garden that he had. It was just a little planter, little bucket garden that his grandma got him set up and started to do. And he found carrot seeds and was really, really interested and decided to plant it. Now, that was his only carrot out of that whole thing for the year, because I don't know how old the seeds were when we got them or anything like that. But he was so excited when he was able to harvest the carrot that he planted and that he grew and he tended to. He actually took that particular carrot and put it in Hamburger Helper to eat that way. It was his way of doing, well, I want to eat the carrot that I grew, and this is what I think would be best in. So he wanted to do that. I let him do it, and he ate it. So I'm very, very pleased with how that particular project turned out with him. And so, all right. So one of the questions that I always ask when giving this presentation, why do you garden? Feel free to put it in the chat or even unmute here some of the ideas as to why you garden. Yeah, Norina, thanks for putting that out there. 4 of the 6 of your kids are gardeners now, and about 12 families at Church of Gardening as well. We share ideas, food, and tools. Yeah, that's a great way. So, but why else do you garden? Mental health. That is a great one, Diane. Any others? Know the source. It's a hobby. It turns into therapy. It's good exercise. You enjoy growing things. Yeah, those are all great ideas, and wonderful ideas of how to and why we should garden. So, some of the reasons why people tend to garden is their garden is a hobby, or it can even be a form of income, secondary income. When we talked about the statistics earlier, that return on investment of that $600 for a $70 investment, that's pretty good investment as well. Somebody mentioned mental health, so they're doing it for their stress relief and enjoyment. Um, Exercise I saw was one of the topics there in the chat. So very, very good to be able to get out, play in the soil, to just be able to dig and plant those plants that we all know and love. Jeannie says it's very relaxing for her. And so, and it's a others enjoy gardening because they want to get outside more often. They use it as their way of getting out, enjoying nature, and doing something that they really, really enjoy. So all those are good, and all of them are valuable reasons as to why um, we can and should garden. So one of the things that I want to stress moving forward is that just because you cannot move or do things the way that you used to do them does not mean that you have to give up. One of the most important things to remember about gardening is that you are going to define the success of your garden. For my son in the picture earlier, it was him being able to grow that carrot and then eat that carrot that he grew and knowing where it came from. Maybe for you, your success is growing those prize winning zucchinis that you win the county fair with every single year, but you still like to place them on everybody's doorsteps and share with them throughout the year. Or maybe it's your prize winning tomatoes, or I think somebody mentioned they like to eat the tomatoes that they grow so they know where they come from. All of those define success in some aspect or another. So you are who defines what success looks like when moving forward with gardening. And one of the things to think about is that just because you had a large garden in the past does not mean that you have to continue to have the same size or even shape of gardening in the future. And one of the last things I like to point out is that you are going to have to know how much time and energy that you are willing to put into gardening. Um, so that is a big component, is knowing yourself and your own limitations at and or as well. So you need to know how much time and energy you are willing to and able to put into your gardening. Just because you have the seeds to plant and used to plant does not necessarily mean that you should plant what you have in the past. Gardening should not be a chore, but something that is for you to enjoy. I want to dive a little bit more into one of our points in the last slide of about understanding your limits. Knowing your limits and what your body can tolerate is a huge part of knowing how much you should garden and everything like that. So arthritis, I know, is a huge limiting factor for a lot of people. Arthritis can take the joy of gardening away. With your back, hip, knee pain, wrist, shoulder, and elbow pain. Things like bending and kneeling and pruning and weeding and all those other gardening tasks can feel more like a chore when you hurt. But one thing I always want to point out, though, and it's not always true, but for some it's true. The arthritis can sometimes be as much of a mental limitation as it is a physical limitation. And what I mean by that is sometimes you kind of can psych yourself out. of, well, if I do this, if I pull the weeds, I know my arthritis is going to flare up and I'm going to hurt. Well, if that's the case, maybe you've already psyched yourself out and put it in your mind that, oh, if I do this, I'm going to hurt, and so I just don't want to do it. Um, but sometimes that can happen. I don't want to discount that at all, but sometimes it is more of a mental limitation than it is a physical. Um, Arthritis pain can also make gardening seem like it's a tough task that needs to be completed. Kind of goes back into the mental aspect of it as well. There is no time limit in gardening. I mean, yes, there is a time limit for harvesting things. You don't want it to go bad. But when it comes to pulling the weeds or watering or anything like that, we want to be able to slow down, take our time, and be able to enjoy the reason why we're out there in the garden. And rushing yourself can irritate arthritic joints as well when we start to dive into that a little bit more. So one of the things that I want to share is we want to prepare ourselves for gardening, prepare our body. So before we, no, that wasn't what I want to do. So before we get ready to garden, you should take some time to do some simple stretches to help loosen your body to get ready for the gardening activity to take place. These stretches usually have low exertion and are simple to accomplish. The second step is to listen to your body. By listening to your body, you know when you should bend, squat, or pick something up, or even when you should not do some of those issues as well. Not listening to your body is a good way to get yourself hurt and unable to garden again in the future. Allow yourselves to take breaks and rest. It's not a race, even in the middle of weeding, planting, or carrying items. Gardening is not a race and going too fast is certainly not listening to your body and your limitations or your capabilities. Next thing is get creative with how you accomplish a task. Maybe you use a wheelbarrow or a garden cart to carry all the tools for your garden, or even you're riding lawnmower with a wagon. I had a boss one time that if it had hydraulics and a motor, it was a lot easier to move those heavier items than it would be by hand. This may even lead you to looking into new tools that are easier to operate and to use. If you have all the energy at the beginning of the day, go ahead and use it wisely by completing some of your most physical tasks first or earlier in the day. I know for myself that I feel a lot better once the big and demanding tasks are completed first and not all the little ones with the big ones staring me at the face in the end. There isn't enough energy or motivation sometimes to leave them to the very last thing. Finally, be willing to ask for help. This can be a prime opportunity to bring in that grandchild, an older adult child, or even a significant other to help you complete a tasks. Not only you are, or excuse me, not only are you able to get the task completed, but you are sharing your love of gardening with them and sharing your time with them as well. So, I'm actually going to stop sharing for just a moment here because I have a video here and I know I didn't get it set up correctly for the last one. Share sound. Okay. All right. All right. So the next one here is a video here. And it's just going to walk us through some general steps on some general ideas of how to stretch here. And I apologize, I did not test this out before I started. So, Okay, so my video is not working like it should. So I'm gonna go ahead and find that video, and then we'll put it in the final wrap up with the email that we send out here later. So one of the things that I want to stress is that don't be afraid to try something new. Um, the old adage of comfort and growth cannot happen simultaneously applies to this as well. Having the desire to remain active and garden, even if you are not in the same physical shape you once were, is a huge benefit to this as well. So there are tools on the market that can make digging easier from a chair, just as you can make lifting a heavy bucket easier with the aid of another tool. Be willing to try a new tool that allows you to dig in the dirt with less effort and strain on your body. The same can be said about garden beds as well. Maybe in the past you've had to be on your knees in the dirt, hand digging every row for the onions. Now you still want to grow your prize winning onions, but you can look into a raised bed to basically to do what you would have had to do in the ground. Last point I want to make on this slide is that be willing to try new ways of doing routine activities. Maybe it's adding a tool to help you pull the weeds, or you think different positions, such as sitting on a stool or work instead of kneeling on the ground. Um, in this next slide here is a couple different tools that can be used to kind of to think a little bit differently. So in the top left-hand corner there, you see a gentleman sitting on a bucket or a stool that kind of swivels at the bottom and allows him to kind of lean into what he's doing. In this instance, it's painting a fence. Um, the top right-hand corner is a bench for individuals to either sit or kneel on. What I really, really like about this bench is in the kneeling position, you notice the tall arms off to the side. You can use those tall arms as help to get up off the ground and to get yourself back up onto your feet. So these are all great tools to be able to use. And then the bottom and the center there is some ergonomic tools. These are more handheld tools, but what I really like about this one is the small picture there is a fork with an arm cuff support. What that does is it turns, instead of um, using your wrist to do a lot of the digging and everything like that, you end up moving your range of motion up to your shoulder, and so you're using your whole arm to do the uh, same action as what you would have just been using your wrist. So it's a much bigger lever to be able to do those same things. The branded tools, I think we'll get into some of that a little bit later. There is actually a website here where we can walk through a lot of different tools as well, but we'll get into that later, Mary. All right, so the next thing is we want to make sure that we support our joints when we are gardening. You may feel as if wearing a brace or splint might limit your range of motion, and you would be correct. But these limits are actually to help protect us in the event that you get a wild hair and think you can do something that you really should not be doing. These braces and splints also help to keep your body in place that it should be, and in the correct position as well. So, when thinking about twisting and reaching, there's two separate motions that can cause pain. How many of you have twisted or reached for something and thought, I really shouldn't have done that? Me as a 40-some-year-old person, I'm starting to realize some of those things that, yeah, yes, I used to be able to do that, but maybe I shouldn't do that in the future or even right now. So then after a while, it starts to hurt more and more. You realize, I may have overdone it. So by keeping the twisting and the reaching to a minimum, you can reduce the likelihood of getting yourself hurt. One of the biggest things that we can do to ensure that we don't hurt ourselves in the garden is to actually wear the proper footwear. Proper footwear is essential to anyone. You know, I know for myself, I even tend to hurt when I don't have the proper footwear for the job that I'm trying to accomplish, depending on what job it is. So the proper footwear should offer support and be comfortable. So according to the health and safety or the occupational health and safety website, finding the right shoe or boot is about finding the right fit and protection for the specific duties while on the job. Based on these duties, excuse me, some may need to focus more on slip resistance, while others may need more heavily consider climate control and breathability. It is therefore important to evaluate the overall need, calling into account different environments to determine which features are the most important. So for gardening, we want to make sure that we've got a durable and closed-toed shoe that supports our feet for the uneven ground that we can walk on sometimes. I know I've not been in a single garden that is just paper flat. So there's always just a little bit of hill and a little bit of rollingness to those gardens. So we want to make sure that we've got a shoe that can support our not only our ankles, but our feet, our legs, and everything like that, support our whole bodies in that. So Crocs, yes, they may be comfortable and easy to get on and get off, but they may not always be the right choice for gardening. So, all right. So moving on here. So wearing gloves is another way to serve a couple different purposes for you. So the first is protects your hands from getting dirty, but it can also aid in giving you some grip to hold on to some things. Gloves can also protect you from any minor cuts or scrapes. As we tend to get older, our skin does tend to get a little bit thinner and a little easier to break and to bleed a little bit more. So wearing those gloves it's just a good idea in order to kind of protect ourselves. Even like I said, I'm a 40-something-year-old, and even I go, well, where did I get that cut or scrape from? And it's just like, I don't remember what I did to even get it, but there it is. So actually on my other desk over here, I have got some leather gloves here. Very, very good, very protective. They've got a Velcro strap here with them and to be able to fit on there. And basically what we want to be able to do is have the glove be an extension of our hand. We don't want the glove to be cumbersome, but we want it to be comfortable. So there are gloves that are out there that have cut resistant gloves and a little bit of grippiness to them as well to help you be able to grip things as well. So there are always gloves are almost always an essential thing for us. There should be anyway. All right. The next question is there a different way to garden than what we have in the past? So let's think of a couple different ways that we can garden, but not be out in the dirt or in our hands and on our hands and knees. So here's a couple different types of gardening ideas that you might want to consider. So we've got our container gardening, which is anything that's in a container. So there's planter beds, there's buckets, there's anything that you want to think of. And there's also raised beds. So we're going to dive a little bit more into container gardening here. So containers that can be used for gardening are only limited by your imagination. These can be clay, wood, plastic, cement, metal, are all suitable for materials for growing plants. Many items around the house can be modified for use as plant containers, such as pots, tubes, crates, buckets, bushel baskets, whiskey barrels, tires, wheelbarrows, and hanging baskets. I know here in Kokomo, there is a flower shop, a local flower shop that actually has an old VW Bug, very similar to the picture in the top left-hand corner there of the images. And they actually change out their flowers depending on what flowers are in season and everything like that. I know my mom has taken an old cedar box that wasn't being used anymore on the farm, and you could put flowers in it as well. So, um, can you use tires for edible gardening? Rita, I think you can, but what I would caution you on is I want to make sure I've got a barrier in between that tire and what we're actually growing. So we may want to think about lining it with plastic to be able to, that way we don't happen to pick anything up from those tires. So, um, so whatever material, however, a good container must allow excess water to drain out and provide sufficient space for the roots to grow. So the images there um, are some different ways of container gardening. So maybe you remodeled your bathroom and your husband hasn't gotten rid of the toilet yet. To make a statement, you go, well, we're just going to plant some flowers in there, or something like that. Or, maybe you've got some limited space and you can only garden in flower pots, like in the top right-hand corner there. Or there's even planter boxes there. Yes, and that is a very good point. Be careful about using vehicles and vehicle parks. Can lead to toxic substance. So yes, you want to make sure whatever you're using is a clean and free of toxins. For something like that, I would probably recommend more of a flour type substance, something you're not eating, but definitely it's still an option. It's like I said before, it's only limited by your imagination and what you want. So, all right, moving on here. We're going to talk a little bit about raised beds. So one of the things that I really like about raised beds is there's no height restriction for those raised beds. So they can be just above the ground a little bit, or they can be raised to about waist high where you don't have to bend over at all. So raised beds also bring the garden to a height that is more workable for physically disabled or even elderly gardeners who cannot stoop or bend over to a flat garden bed. There is no standard size for a raised bed, but keep in mind that you'll want to be able to reach across and reach everything in the bed without stepping into it. A bed that is only accessible from one side should be about no more than 2 feet wide, while the bed that can be reached on both sides can be about 4 feet wide. So there are certain raised beds out on the market that are high enough that if you know somebody who's in a wheelchair, you can get it up high enough for them to be able just to roll right underneath it and then just kind of reach across and be able to garden that way. So raised beds are an excellent way for somebody with some physical limitations to still be able to garden and participate in that as well. All right, moving on here. So one of the big questions I get is, where can I go to find the resources? Where is there a library or a toolbox of all these different accessibility tools for me? So there actually happens to be a website called Agribility that has a toolbox of all the different tools that can be for or accessibility. So we're going to kind of walk through one, and then I can hop on the website here in a little bit after we walk through this, and we can kind of show you a little bit more as to what it actually looks like. So one of the things that I really like, or as we dig into this toolbox a little bit more, you can see that there are plenty of different categories or different types of tools, not only for gardening, but for any other topic as well. So if you happen to be a woodworker as well, besides gardening, there's stuff for shops and shop tools. If you just want to have a nice lawn and want to be able to do some of that, there's a tab for lawn care, gardening beds, wheelbarrows, there's basically a ton of different stuff on this website and the resources to be able to go out and either purchase it or even make it yourself as well. So, so diving in, I just went ahead and looked up the motorized wheelbarrow. And what I really like about this website is that it gives you a synopsis of what is actually going on It has videos available if there's videos available on these individual products, and tells you where you can go to either A, get the plans to build it yourself, or B, where you can go purchase it for yourself as well. So there's, like I said, there's a ton of different options here to be able to do that. And when I finish up the slide set here, I'll go ahead and go into that. So with that, there's a list of my resources here that I use to make this presentation here. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop my share here real quick. And I'm gonna go ahead and let's go to the Agribility website. Maybe that's why my video wasn't working earlier, because now my Chrome has crashed. So that's great, wonderful. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and put this this slide back up here to show, to give you an idea of what screen two. And then in the chat, I will also put, maybe if I can find my chat. Anyway, I'm not seeing my chat anywhere, but agribility.org/toolbox. That's where you can find a list of all of the different types of things in there. So when you get there, this is what you're going to see. And as you click on like the gardening, you're going to be able to, it'll open up all these different types of things that you'll be able to have access to. So, oops, not that one. Sorry about that. All right. So with that, does anyone have any questions about the presentation today? So there's a link to the website that I mentioned earlier. And if you have questions, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll get them answered for you. You're very welcome, Mary. Thanks for the information. Okay. So we do have a post survey as well. So yeah, would like to know more about the stretching exercises. Yes, I will definitely put that, get that video that I had sent out or was planning to show you, get that sent out to you. So there's a link that I just put in the chat. Feel free to go ahead and fill that out. That's kind of a post-survey wrap-up. And just let us know how we did. Or even if you have other topics, feel free to put that in the bottom there. But with that, any other questions? Okay. Well, as we mentioned earlier, we do have a season 6 coming up here for Hot Topics. And we mentioned that next month is the Animal Diagnostic Lab coming to give us a presentation, and we'll see about getting the strawberry presentation rescheduled and get it recorded and put it up on our website or on our YouTube page as well. If you like this one or even want to know about others that we've talked about, we've talked about chickens in the past, we talked about trees, we've talked about a lot of different other topics, some lawn care topics and everything like that. We've got all these recorded and available to use as well. These do count for Master Gardener hours as well, or education hours. So feel free to go ahead and put them in there as well. With that, oh yes, go ahead and fill it out on the strawberry webinar. Yes, and then we'll get what I know to change that on my end. So the next date, again, it's always going to be the third Thursday of the month. So that is going to be July 17th is when the next at noontime. That's going to be our next date for this. I will see if I can find that. I accidentally closed out of that earlier. So I'm going to see if I can find that real quick here. So if you've already signed up for season 5, you should get all the information for season 6. So you don't need to re-sign up again. All right, my computer's not wanting to cooperate very well right now, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to share this part right here. And there is a list of the season 6 upcoming topics. So like I said, July 17th, we're going to have Produce Animal Disease and Diagnostic Lab. August, we're going to talk about toxic forages. In September, we're going to have our tick update. October 16th, the history of extension. November, we're going to talk about turf ID and fertilization. It's always a great time to do that in the fall. And then in December, we're going to talk about local food systems. So another exciting session that we've got. And thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. But with that, if nobody has any other questions, we're going to go ahead and sign off here. And thanks for tuning in, even though it wasn't what we expected. But hopefully we made it enjoyable for you. And hopefully you learned something today. So where can we find info about strawberries? Yeah, that's a great topic or a great question. I am going to go ahead and find out a little bit more on that. And we'll see if we see if we can include that in our wrap-up email as well. So with that, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.